Good morning, everyone. Hi, Javi. Got up to a cold morning today, so I know it's about a month before winter, but we had the poor guys in Buffalo have 5 feet of snow, so this is in sympathy. It's just cold in the morning, though. Hi, John. Hey, Clyde. How you doing? Clyde, I left you a couple messages. Hi, Badu. Badu from ASU. General Framework, Alexander. Hey, neighbor. Junior. Good to see all you guys. Graham, how are you, Graham? Everybody has a different time of day. The official time is good morning because it's cold. Hi, Big Sal. Big Sal, you just got a special watch, I think. Oh, you like my hat? Yeah, I got this hat in Finland a few years ago, and when it's really cold, um, I I like to wear it. It'll get hot pretty soon. I'll have to change my hat. Hey, Rancher, what's up? Oh yeah, I saw that picture. Great picture. Yeah. Yeah, those things are fun to wear. Speaking of watches, I got my watch back from this is my Lurique Etude number one, and I just got it back from the chronometer testing, and now I can officially call it a chronometer because it passed. They put the thing up for 15 days. They did it at different temperatures, they did it at different altitudes, and it did great. So I'm happy. Hi, William. Okay, the other day I was taking a look at a number of different watches, and one of the things that I noticed was I was looking at Omegas, and there was I always look at see what kind of movement they have and so forth. And this one sort of a this is at the Omega site. They said uh, there's a revolutionary new material in a hairspring, but they didn't say what kind of hairspring it was. Well, it's sort of like in 15,000 Gauss, probably silicon, and of course that's what it was. And I think there's a lot of people say, well, what do you got against silicon? And I mean, let me enumerate the ways, but that's not really, I suppose, the point. Again, we find ourselves with if you like silicon, knock yourself out. Okay, I just got my wife a smartwatch, an Apple Watch with it does everything. She got a really nice one, and it looks like an Hermes watch that which is it's a wind up or automatic. But, it's got tons of silicon and it does everything. It tells her, "Hey, you're sitting around too much. Get up and walk around." If you fall down wearing one of those things, it has a sort of, I guess, a fall alarm, and it's got everything in it, and it's full of silicon. And that's really a cool watch. Now, on the other hand, a mechanical watch with a oh, let me just go to periodic table of elements. Under the periodic table of elements, the metals like steel and gold and so forth are called transitional metals. Metals like silicon and arsenic come under the category of metalloids. Now, metalloids work perfectly well as for parts of watches. I mean, silicon works great. Quartz watches for years, I still are, as a matter of fact, far better timekeepers than traditional mechanical watches. Nothing new there. But suddenly we people and to survive for the watch industry to survive in Switzerland and elsewhere, they started sort of inventing marketing ideas like high horology and so on and so forth. And and that was so that they could sort of ballyhoo, all right, the value of horology using traditional methods and so on and so forth. Well, um, okay, so some of us, myself, sort of like that idea, and the whole idea of a purely mechanical watch. It also for people who are into, well, as I am, into like good for the environment. Now I know that creating these watches can make certain things, but by and large, I mean, you can't ask for. You take a wind up or an automatic mechanical watch. There's nothing in here that does anything bad for polluting or anything like that. On the other hand, um, the batteries in uh, quartz watches do. And if you use a lot of them, it's, I don't know, we have a special bag and then they have a special way of taking care of batteries, for disposing of them. Okay, so going back to silicon hairsprings, let me start off and first of all say why. Uh, One of the big problems, and it's bigger than most people I think realize, is watches that get magnetized. I have a silicon, I mean, I have an FP Journe watch that loves to get magnetized. And next time I send it in for service, I'm going to say, look, guys, replace the hairspring, put in one that is, oh, out of something non-magnetic other than silicon. Either that or sort of update whatever update was used because the watch is from 2007, I think. Yeah, I think that's it. And whatever hairspring they put in there wasn't quite as non-magnetic. And so it is a problem. I know that whenever my watch starts running really slow, that's what it's going to be. My demagnetizers thing wears out my demagnetizers. They don't work either. So you really solve a lot of problems. Plus the fact that in manufacturing, uh, hairsprings made out of some kind of transitional metal like niobium and titanium. Those are metals that are used because they have not zero but very low magnetization. Probably the best known one is the Straussmann hairspring that was created at Precision Engineering, which is part of H. Moser. And when you look at the very, very best watchmakers, like Carivut and Lana and MB&F, they all use that hairspring. It is expensive, but it's really good. It works good. It works very well. Same thing with Rolex. Rolex was part of the three groups, Swatch, Patek Philippe, and Rolex were the group that went and developed the silicon hairspring. Now, the problem is if some people, I don't know, I think George Daniels would be flipping both ways in his grave. On the one hand, he was a big advocate of free sprung hairsprings over what he called curve regulators. And on the other hand, I don't think he would have stood for um, silicon. What's his name? Smith. Roger Smith, the student of George Daniels, is really just no, he doesn't want to even think about having silicone hairspring. And the other really tip top watchmakers that I've talked to, they don't want silicone. It's sort of like almost like a crutch. It's a very good crutch, I might add. You put a silicone hairspring in a watch, and you're not going to have magnetization problems. You're not, and you're going to. Another thing too is that they're good for being higher and lower temperatures, because on a hairspring made of transitional metals, if it gets hotter or colder, they can something changes in their shape. And so, but with not with are not anywhere near as much. I mean, you can stand more extreme weather conditions using a silicone hairspring. So the on the one hand, you say, yeah, that's that's exactly what we want in a watch. On the other hand, you can say, well, so's quartz, even more so because they operate at a much higher frequency. They're much more accurate. Um, yeah, the battery thing is a problem. Seiko seems to have solved that problem by having they have a automatic charge generator that will do it. What's that called? Something spring that Seiko has. Okay. So anyway, these are some of the things. I mean, there are a lot of advantages of having silicon hairspring, but that's true. I mean, it's sort of the logic goes, yeah, but that's also true with quartz. It's really true who have lots and lots of silicon in them. It's a smartwatch. And smartwatch just does. I mean, my wife's Apple Watch. I'm totally just really amazed at the Hermes horse shows up, or she can have any other dial she wants. There's all kinds of things you can do. So in terms of arguing, well, this is progress. Progress is way over a silicon hairspring. What it does though is that you can't have a curb regulator. You can't have a like what is it? A Mullahy, a woodpecker regulator. You can't have a lot of things that you can adjust by simply adjusting the hairspring because it won't adjust. It's too brittle. If you try to stretch it one way or the other, it'll crack and crumble. But the idea is that you don't have to. Getting those things, I was noticing that the Omegas that I was looking at, they're all chronometer. They're certified as chronometers, which means they're very very accurate. So anyway, so that's sort of my thoughts on it. I'd like to know what yours are. Caloric magnetism used encapsulate the movement in soft iron, if memory serves me, before titanium, which was before silicon. Yeah, I think you have just sold silicon hairsprings to you. Okay, Graham. Um, you, you got it. Knock yourself out. Spring drive. That's the word I was trying to think of, where you have well, actually, when you look at quartz, quartz is simply silicon and oxygen. I think someone might argue for a tool watch. Take a Omega as a tool watch, and you don't even they're great for that. But a smartwatch, an Apple Watch is even better if your major concern is keeping good time. Now, if your concern is having something that looks like, I'll say, a traditional wristwatch, and you want it to keep good time, then again, and you want to use it, you go to work every day and you're concerned about it being accurate. Yeah, sure. But in terms of anything else, I mean, why would anyone include that in a collection as a collectible watch as opposed to some of these other things? I've got. It's sort of like some guy said, "Ah, get over it," You're not all right. I'll get over it. Take all the silicon and dump it in the bay or something. I think that you have a it's sort of this. On the one hand, you have traditional watchmaking, and the reason that the quartz crisis was a crisis is that it whammed right into that, and instead of getting these, mechanical watch that you have to wind up and so forth, the Japanese came out with, this quartz, timekeeping technology and could do all of these great things, so that's sort of so where do you wanna go? And now you have sort of something like, well, you know, we'll just make the hairspring. Now here's on the other hand, an escapement, if you have a silicon, escapement where to keep the magnetization out, um, to me, that's not a problem because it doesn't do anything differently than a one made of transitional metals. On the other hand, with a hairspring, you got an issue with that. Yeah, John, you're right. They have more than one. Hi, Rod. You're the one I know that tells me to shut up about that. I know your thoughts and you know mine. So, smarting from roasting. I didn't. Well, I don't know. He tell me to get over it. You know, that's like a cold. Sorry, Raj. But the thing of it is that is that you can't. Let's say you take Patek Philippe. I love Patek Philippe's. I really do. But I like the ones that were before 2009 when they started stuffing silicon in their watches. I don't know. I've got the other thing is that they're sort of like, yeah, we put it there, but we don't want to brag about it. We'll say, "Oh, hey, we got 15,000 Gauss." Well, that sort of becomes a code word for like we put in silicon. On the other hand, you look at Rolex with their parachrome hairsprings. They could have put in silicon, but they didn't. Uh, the all of your top watchmakers are using Strawman hairsprings, including H. Moser, and they're going to be probably. I mean, there are a lot of other hairspring makers. Just for our watch, so the Reek watch, um, Agenor had to go to Atocalpa and have them make a special hairspring because of what they call their Agon pit regulator. Intellectual property is part of part of from Agenor. So you have you have that. I mean, it's like um, I was looking at my what is it? Uh Langenheim, and they have this absolutely gorgeous swan neck regulator on the back. You can't do that with a silicon one. So I don't know. That's that. I mean, for to me, if you're into collecting these mechanical watches, which were since the 1950s have been an anachronism, you sort of stick with it. Um, Hi, Ref, or Rel. Hi, Big Cell. I think silicon also introduces the what else can we do to replace tradition and where do we draw the line? Yeah, Big Cell. You just got a watch with the the forever wind to it. You wind, you wind, you wind, and you have this beautiful watch that keeps wonderful time. And I don't know, putting silicon in it just seems like I don't know. I could do. I don't know how Patek Philippe did it, how they decided that. Patek Philippe made a lot of interesting decisions. At one time, it was to keep out, what's it called? Stop seconds or hacking. We don't want to have hacking in there. And that's because their engineers said that hacking is wham, the old brake comes down on the balance wheel. It's not good for it. And so for years they didn't have it. And I guess a lot of collectors or a lot of people who bought their watches said, "Oh, how come it doesn't have stop seconds or hacking?" Um, FP Journe watches don't have hacking, and a lot of other top ones do, but a lot of other top ones do have hacking, or what they call stop seconds. But that's something, can be sort of, if you want to have a controversy, having stop seconds and not having stop seconds. I mean, there are things we can talk about, and uh, our watch does not have stop seconds, and I'm glad because that means the movement isn't getting hammered by a big brake coming down on it. On the other hand, my Langenheim has it, and every time I turn it over on the back and pull the crown out, the stem out to set the time, I see that thing stop, and I just breaks my heart. Okay, that begs the question, how are watches fitted with silicone hairsprings adjusted? Well, uh, yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. You don't have to adjust them. Um, I do think that since they're free sprung, since they're free sprung um, balances, they can't be. I mean, you have no regulator to reset it, and so what you do, you have to go in and balance those little weights that are around it. So it can be adjusted that way, which is both pretty difficult. What Jean-Marc Wiederrecht did with the Agon pit, he has this thing that you unscrew these things and you just move it around until you get it to what you want to. One set of screws changes um, the frequency, and the other one changes the beat. And so, I mean, it's like something that would take a watchmaker to do well. Even maybe a pretentious watchmaker like myself could do a little of it. But with the silicon, it's sort of like keep your mitts off of that, and I guess they could just, I mean, if something went wrong, they could break and have another one. Hi, Kent. When are you scheduled to be on Tim Wright's show? I don't know. Um, okay. Hi, Rich Scotty. Um, okay. Now, another kind of thing related to this that is, I think, up and coming, and it's being done or led by a watchmaker who I respect greatly, and that's Carol Forstier Casapi. She's the head honcho at Tag Heuer now after making all these great movements at Cartier and winning the Watchmaker of the Year. She goes over to Tag Heuer, and Tag Heuer, they keep talking about they're going to have a new movement, and they never do. It's some version of the ETA warmed over, but now she's working on with carbon and going to have carbon hairsprings. Carbon hairsprings are going to have the same issue, I think, that silicon ones do. So that's, I don't know. A carbon somehow doesn't seem to be as, I don't know what, as silicon, but that's another thing that'll be interesting to see. I think Tag Heuer, Tag Heuer is one they have a lot of watches that I like the looks of. I think they can win a lot of icon awards. Okay, what about changing silicone hairsprings? I tell you, I'd be very surprised if they need changing. They keep their shape, so they're not going to get too hot and too cold. Um, they have a lot of, like I said, there are many, many um good features to them. I mean, this is the thing though, is that if you take a quartz watch and you take a traditional mechanical watch, silicon, I mean, the quartz watch is going to keep better time and has these all of these advantages. And so, in order to survive, the Swiss watchmaking said, "Well, hey, we're going to come back, and we got this thing we call high horology, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and then you can wear this really fancy watch, and it's made with traditional master watchmakers and so forth." And sort of that was at least that's what I bought into. Like, oh boy, here's a watch that we could trace back to Abraham Louis Breguet in terms of the technologies used, and I like that. Uh, I mean, like, I've got two clocks. Both of them are battery run, and they run on quartz. Yeah, they're okay, but they're just if they had a wind up one, I don't know if I'd bother with it. But there are things that I'm not saying that quartz is terrible, but it nor silicon. It simply is what it is, and you can take it or leave it. I've chosen to leave it, especially as far as hairsprings are concerned. Okay, what you got? Hi, Kent. Uh, when are you scheduled to be on Tim Wright's show? I'm not. Tim hasn't asked me to be on his show. We talked about it at the Watch Time show. We just haven't got around to it yet. Um, okay, Andreas. Hi, Andreas. There's even watches with silicone hairsprings and swan necks regulators, so its usability is questionable. They may be. You're right, Andrea. Uh, what I think they may be used for is to adjust the beat. I may be wrong. They're not really touching the hairspring. It's doing something else with the balance wheel, and I think, and that's adjusting the beat. Hi, Joss. How you doing? I work in data centers, so silicon hairspring is a nice thing to have. What? That's because you work in a in a data center? Good God. I used to write programs for, mobile devices, and I wanted to get as far away from them as I could. Joas is gonna follow your work is gonna follow you around like an unwanted cat, so, in a data center, yeah, I mean, you go to Silicon Valley and, you have an Apple Watch or something even better that somebody, made and so that they could program themselves. I got, my I want silicon. I've got my iPhone with me most of the time. Here it is right here. It's standing by so I can use it to check. Boom. There's the right time. And so, and I look at my watch. They're in agreement. So I guess this one's okay. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not a place for silicon technology. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, you take for example, let's say that you're an art collector, and someone says, "Hey, I got a Van Gogh that's done in acrylic." What? That's Wait a minute. I don't. Van Gogh never used acrylic. That's true. And so, I mean, Why would I want one of those? And the types of different kinds of paintings and paint and so on and so forth that's used throughout the ages. Art collectors are very, very fussy about the kind of media that's used in the paintings and the paintings they collect. The same thing is true with, um, I'll call it the art aspect of watch collection. Now, like I said, somebody wants silicon, fine. I'm not going to say, oh, you shouldn't have silicon. I'm simply saying I don't want it. I mean, in my collection, I just don't want it. Why? It's sort of like I got it all around me. But I want nice traditional, good master watchmakers make the watches that I have. Do you think eventually the industry will move away from silicon? I don't know what they're going to do, to tell you the truth. I think that if if they're trying to beat smartwatches, I mean, the number of people who have smartwatches, even if they had regular watches before, they have an Apple Watch, and you know, my wife's Apple Watch is bossing her around. All right, get up and walk, and if you fall down, it'll call an ambulance. Really, that's really something. But I think that it's sort of like I said, like a art collector. An art collector wants art with a certain kind of techniques and so on and so forth. To me, that's what watch collection is. It's like collecting traditional art. If I had a Picasso, and it was done in acrylic, for example, I don't think he may have used acrylic. I don't think so, though. You art smarties, you can tell me whether they did or not. But that's is sort of the way I feel about it. So I'm not saying so in the same way that I would talk to a modern artist and I say, "Oh, you can't use acrylic. You have to use oil." And that's why, well, acrylic does things with my art that you can't do. The same thing is true with silicon. That's the way I look at it. I don't know. John, you may be right. I cannot but think that silicon hairsprings impose an expiration date. This is what Roger Smith says. He says, we've got these watches that are, over 300 years old that still work fine. This friend of mine an old Waltham that he showed me, wanted me to find out about it. And he got it, his mother left it to him, and so I was trying to find out about it. I thought, "Well, I better wind it up to see if it works." This thing's still working great, and so that may be an issue, but that's to me, that's not my issue with it. My issue is that I'd rather see companies like, H. Moser create things like the, Straumann hairspring or Rolex continue to use parachrome hairspring. And then they don't have to put these. I mean, if Omega wasn't a little worried about it, why wouldn't they simply say up front rather than saying this revolutionary new material? Silicon's not new or revolutionary. It's like, go back to the 50s where they are 60s when they started using quartz watches. I mean, silicon is that. And again, this is not saying silicon is bad. It's just not what I want in the watches that I'm going to plunk down a lot of money for. After I got my wife the top of the line Apple Watch, I thought, my God, these things are bargains. You don't have to spend too much to get the really great watch. Anyway, okay, guys, let's see. As long as a process could be simplified, will result in mass manufacture. No, that's not true. That's not true. This is the whole thing about it is that they went backwards from silicon. I mean, from quartz. They said, no, let's go back to traditional methods. That's not See, this is a you get accused of being a Luddite if you don't want silicon in your watches. That has nothing to do with it. You're talking about two different tracks. One track is with traditional watchmaking. The other track is, well, you're going to improve it so you have better timekeeping. I got it on my iPhone, on an Apple Watch or something like that. That's progress. And so we're really talking about two different things. Now, in terms of the process being simplified and cheaper to do that, yeah, that's sort of true, but not totally true. See, this is the whole thing about high horology. And also too, even if you look at the Geneva Seal isn't going to go on a watch with silicon uh, hairsprings anyway. So yeah, you got to look at it in a different way. I mean, we're not talking about what we'll say smart progressive technology. We're talking about old technology. Okay, let's see. Good for you, Bato. Me too. I like VC. Look at Vacheron Constantin, Audemars Piguet. And I think you're going to have to replace Patek Philippe with another top watch, maybe a Longa or something, or any number of other ones. Hi, David. The silicon hairspring is still 200 years old technology, regardless of material used. Okay. Well, I mean, they use silicon. Silicon's an element. It's probably older than 200 years. Okay, guys, I've been warned by the rancher that my time is up. So I don't know. I just wanted to talk about it. And, like if your watches have silicon and you're happy with them, enjoy it. I'm just, like I said, this is sort of a view that I thought was worth talking about. Take care. If you're around by 4 o'clock today, I'll probably have on a cooler hat. In the meantime, be safe.